Hello everybody, Nathan here, and today I'm bringing you my opinions on a game just about to be released on Steam. It'll be released on July the 28th, called This Is the Police. So let's get straight into this. So what's going on here then? Well, it's a game by We Happy Studios, and as you can see, I've got a nice little police force in front of me. These are my officers, and these are my detectives. Now, in this game, you're going to play as the police chief, and you're soon to retire, so you're looking to make a little bit of cash before you go, to set you up for retirement, you know, get a boat, go off and do the normal sunny kind of things that you might do in retirement. And your days will largely revolve around controlling the police force in such a way. The mayor has just burnt a cigarette on the city, by the way, that's why that was there. But as you can see here, the main focus is going to be around the officers. The detectives only really come into play later, and you're going to have these events that pop up. Now, if I open this one, you'll see hit and run. A married couple exited a convenience store. I thought I said excited initially. A married couple exited a convenience store and saw a van in the parking lot back over a homeless man. Right, and they drove away. So, I get to choose who goes out to deal with this. And as you'll see here, we've got 6 officers, and the star rating depicts how good they are at their job, how likely they are going to be able to deal with the situation. And generally speaking, you're also going to want to send someone out with one of these little badges, because that means they're in a position of power, and officers that go out with them will often act more efficiently and more effectively. So we're going to send Kochi out, and I kind of want to send Price, but chances are Price is going to get sacked pretty damn fast. And you only really want to send people initially that you want to level up, because if they do well, they'll get higher ratings. So we're going to send Subaki. I am probably butchering a bunch of these names, I apologise. And you'll be able to see that they're going to go out and deal with the crime. We've got another one pop up. A fight at a theatre. Let's send Yancy and Purdy. I'm not even going to worry about that too much, because I want to have a little talk about the genre of this sort of game. Now, as you can tell here at the moment, very much a management style game. You get to choose who goes where and how they deal with things. Occasionally extra things will pop up during the crimes that they're solving, and you'll have to manage the situation as best you can. You've got limited resources that you have to make sure things are going well, and as you'll see here, we got the offender caught and officers unharmed, and their rating went up, so they'll be more effective in the future. However, the game isn't all management sim. There are cutscenes, as it were, that are pretty much solidly a visual novel. They do offer you choices, but they do punctuate the management sections of the game, and I'll talk a little bit more about the visual novel sections a bit later. So anyway, all these crimes seem to be going well, and, you know, they'll continue to pop up. This is an armed robbery, which is a bit more serious, although it's still only allowing me 2 police officers. Now, in this scenario, I do have 2 police officers available that could go, but instead I'm just going to wait and let more experienced officers get back and deal with it that way, because it does sound like a fairly serious thing, and it's not something I particularly want to mess up. And we've got 3 teenagers armed with a shotgun, so yeah, let's send out the better guys for that. And we got this one as well. It's actually quite a busy day. You don't usually get them quite this busy, but then again, I have just started a new game in order to demonstrate what's going on. Later in the game, there are fewer incidents, it seems to me, but they're a lot harder to deal with. Jeez, there's another one. Assault in the ghetto. We will see how well these 2 officers do on this one. I don't think they'll do very well at all. One of them could even die. This game doesn't back away from that kind of thing. You will have to deal with rapes, murders. You can even kill your own officers if it's beneficial. You obviously don't do it yourself. Now this is this is where I feel the game is at its absolute best. You'll notice that in the other crimes that we've been out to, the officers went there, did their thing, and came back. There was no real interactivity. You just managed the resources you had and decided who went and all that stuff. Now, in this scenario, we get a question. The officers, let's look at it thematically. The officers have phoned back and gone, "Boss, the vehicle in question is parked right outside the Brown residence. The sounds of moaning and loud laughter can be heard through the living room window." And we have 3 choices. We can sneak into the house through an open window, knock on the door, or turn the siren loudspeaker on. Now, this was an armed robbery. I'm gonna say go to the door. Yeah, it might be a bad decision, we'll see. Officers unharmed? Yes, we did it, that's fine. But often with those things, those types of crimes where you actually have a choice to make are a lot more dangerous, because if the officers can't deal with it themselves and you have to step in, it probably means it's a much more dangerous situation. And I've had situations where people have knives to civilians' throats and stuff like that, and you have to make a split-second decision on what to do. And I often fail because I'm not that clever when it comes to police issues. Let's close that up. Now, you'll notice that a lot of these things that pop up that you do just go to are very much just, here's a crime, you send police officers, they do it, they come back. And the game gets very samey after quite a short period of time, actually. There's not enough random events. There are random events, like there'll be a protest that you have to send people to, and you have to decide whether or not to suppress that protest with force, and you can fake evidence as to why you supported, suppressed that protest with force. There we go. And those random events do spice things up and really add something to the game, but they are rare. They're not an everyday occurrence, and I feel like the game needs it. Now, as you see, sending these two officers didn't turn out well. The offender escaped. Often, officers can be killed. Fortunately, on this occasion, they weren't. Austin went down by 10 in the star ranking, and Price is already as low as an officer can go, so can't go any lower than that. And they'll come back. Chances are Price is going to get sacked very early. Now, this is the end of the day at the moment. The day currently ends at 8 o'clock. But if you make certain choices throughout the game, throughout the more visual novel sections of the game, the days can go on till, like, I think 2 o'clock in the morning that you have to carry on playing to, which makes days considerably longer. And nothing more really happens. It just feels like the game is being elongated for the sake of it. Not really sure I'm a fan of that. So that was Shift A, these are my officers, and tomorrow, actually that was Shift B, tomorrow we'll get in Shift A, and these are the officers I'll have available to me tomorrow. And you can see I'll have Stovall, who is pretty damn good for the level I'm at the moment. I mean, on the other shift, I've only got a 270, on this one I've got a 400. So, not too bad, although we do have a lot more of these type of terrible officers too. So we'll have to see if we can deal with stuff there. Now, we might be coming up to a visual novel section of the game. Not 100% on that. Yes, we are. Now, if you don't want to know even the start of the story, because this is only day 2, look away now. But if you do want to know, here is a sort of art style. You can get a view of what's going on here. Now, the story is one of corruption and mob dealings. And I won't say much more than that, because obviously that would start to spoil things. But you do have a few major decisions to make as to your allegiances and what you want to do in the game. And I kind of feel like they wanted to go down a little bit of a Telltale route there, but there aren't really enough decisions to make that happen. I imagine in the game there's probably only about 10 or so branches of sort of different ways you can go. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing as such. It just feels like if they wanted to make a visual novel, this is a little shallow for it. And if they wanted to make a management sim, the management sim side of it is also a little shallow. I kind of wish they just stuck to one, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Now, the art style, as you'll notice, is kind of unique. It's very much featureless, and so you can't tell what's going on anyone's faces, but I do quite like the art style. It also has strong voice acting in general, with John St. John being involved. That's the voice of Duke Nukem, for anyone who doesn't know. I had thought it had been a little bit stifled at times, not necessarily the main character, but some of the others are a little bit odd, like they were recording in different rooms to one another, and they couldn't react off of each other's lines. I do wish with these sections there was some kind of animation, because you'll see if you are watching the screen and, you know, taking in some of the story, that they are just pictures. It's just pictures of people doing things on the screen with, like, slight camera movement, but there's no actual action. And you're just left staring at the same thing for a long, long time. Now, in terms of the story, like I say, I won't go into too much. but it's very slow, and I personally found it quite uninteresting and not something that made me want to carry on playing. You'll find after a little while that these cutscenes are something, if you're like me anyway, that you want to avoid as much as possible. You get to the end of a day, and these cutscenes don't always trigger. But I personally got to the end of the day and thought, please not another cutscene, just let me go back to the management part of the game. So, I'm not particularly sold on the split between management sim and cutscenes of visual novels part of the game. We'll just skip through this now because I know what happens, and I don't think you're watching this to get any more of the story. So let's go back to the actual stuff that's happening. Now, when you start a new day, you get these headlines telling you a little bit about what's going on. So, Francis Kendrick announces retirement date, that's my deputy. Construction of cinema museum postponed again, don't know what that's about, and this thing, I'm not bothered. This annoys me, by the way. Every time you go to work, he starts his car, he has to rev it 3 times. It just feels like a hidden loading screen, but I don't think it is. I think it's just stylistic, and I don't think there's any need to be there. Now, this is interesting. You will get, as police chief, you're in charge of these employees. They'll come to you and say, can I have a day off? And sometimes they'll be utterly rubbish, and sometimes it'll be, my daughter was in a car crash, can I please go home? And these staff have awful things happen to them on a fairly regular basis. I mean, the amount of arson that's committed against them and debilitating diseases that their families get is absolutely terrible. But some of them come in and just say, I was a bit drunk last night, can I go home? And I always say no. Some friends of mine even asked me to help out at their animal shelter. No. I'm a horrible person. That's just who I am. I'm not going to deny it. Now, I would give Staval another badge, but I think we're going to spread it out a bit. Plus, he's an old officer, and I might be forced to get rid of him at some stage. So, back to just managing the police force. You will get this little screen first, which will allow you to put on some music. All, as far as I can tell, just sort of royalty-free stuff, nothing particularly interesting. Tends to be jazz as well, which I'm not a big fan of. I don't particularly like the music in this game, and there is also an issue where the music doesn't last as long as the day does, and once it gets to a certain time, so say this song, Nocturne in B major, I'm sure that's just like, I've said something wrong there, but whatever. It will finish at 6 o'clock in the evening and the day ends at 8 o'clock, and all you will hear between 6 and 8 o'clock is just dead noise. And I can't see any reason that I'd be like that. Surely you could have it on a loop, or just starting again, or you can move on to the next song, but no, you have to go in and manually put another song on if you want to. I'm not a big fan of that. But we're not going to put any music on here anyway, just in case it isn't royalty-free. And it all starts over again. Now, we've got a couple of things we can do at the police station. Apparently, we have space for more officers. So we have space for 1 officer and 1 detective. Odin Beard. I can't not. That's just awesome. I tend to find that hiring them for the shift that you're not on is the best idea, because they'll show up the next day, whereas they won't show up in your force immediately if you hire them for the day you're on. So now we're definitely gonna hire Chauncey Newbury, because his professionalism is just 7 times the other 2, so why not hire him for shift B as well. And there's a few things you can do in here. Tends to just be, you can find out a little bit of info about them. I've never found out the political views actually, so maybe I didn't get far enough into the game. I have played this for, according to Steam, 5 hours. I think that's about right, so I don't know quite what's going on there. But you can fire them, and if you choose to fire them, you'll either be forced to fire them illegally, and there are reasons you'll have to fire them, like the town hall will say, please get rid of all your female officers, and you'll be like, what the fuck, why would I do that? That sounds terrible, but they'll ask you to do it. Or maybe you can fire them legally if they didn't come to work, came in drunk, they're too old, or they failed 3 assignments in a row. Or, a better option, if you choose to have connections with the mob, which you can do in this game, you can pay the mob to kill them. Yeah. Yeah, it's a lovely game. It will cost you about $1,000 of your own cash, but it means you don't have to go to any legal tribunal over firing them illegally, so swings and roundabouts. Maybe you want to look into that. So let's start the day again anyway, see what we've got. Vandalism at St. John's Cathedral. Well, we'll send Robbins and Roy because I want to see what happens. So anything else to mention? I think we've been over most of the gameplay, most of actually what happens in this game. You just sort of send officers out and see how they do for the most part. I suppose I could mention that it gets sort of easier in the middle and then harder if you mess up. So as you send officers out and things, they get gradually better, and eventually you'll end up with officers that have around 600 stars or 700 stars even. And it's virtually impossible to fail at that stage. If you do fail though, City Hall will cut your budget massively and you'll be forced to get rid of an officer. And I found I got to a stage in the game where I wasn't doing well enough because I didn't have enough officers, so City Hall cut my budget and I had to get rid of an officer. And then I didn't have enough officers, so I didn't do well enough. And it just turns into a snowball effect where they just keep cutting the amount of officers I have because I don't have enough officers, and it didn't make any sense. And I'm not 100% sure as to whether that's just because I suck at the game. It could well be. I think I made some poor decisions the first time round. But equally, I feel like there needs to be a way back. It's like if you mess up at the moment, it just ruins the entire game. Once you've messed up one too many times, that's it. You cannot find a way back into the game, and that kind of spoiled it for me. I have restarted the game anyway to do this video, but if I hadn't, I couldn't see any way that I would go back and play this game without restarting entirely. And like I say, I got 5 hours through, so that kind of sucks. Let's see, yes. Well, that's why we can hire another officer. False alarm there, you do get those. But I thought he died actually, but no, he's just decided he can make more money as a bouncer. Fair enough. Don't blame you. Although we get paid 4,500 for that, so sweet. Now what shift's he on? He's on shift A, so let's get another officer for shift A. Now at the moment you'll see I've got 14 cops. In the playthrough I was doing, I ended up with 6. And it gets really hard to stay on top of things with 6 cops, especially when they won't go out alone on certain things, so that kind of sucked. But anyway, I think we're basically done with the gameplay. The only other thing to mention is that performance is absolutely fine. The game is locked to 60. Ooh, hello. Let's do this quickly. As police arrive, a clown is seen making balloon animals for the kids. So I assume this clown has been selling drugs. So we'll carefully watch him from the stands. And we got him. Sweet. So yes, performance is locked at 60, but that's obviously not an issue in the slightest. I have never ever seen it dip below 60. That's absolutely fine with a game like this. And other than that, I haven't really got any issues. So let's go swiftly into the conclusion as we just carry on clicking on some stuff and seeing what's happening. I feel that this game has a little bit of an identity crisis. I do like it, don't get me wrong. I just kind of feel like having both the visual novel side of it and the management side of it wasn't necessarily the right way to go. Both of them feel a little bit too shallow. It's like if they'd focused on just one of them, they could have fleshed it out into a proper, full game. Now, the other thing is, it's certainly not a game to play for hours on end for me, because it gets very, very samey very, very quickly. Effectively, most of the time you're not going to have one of these cutscenes after a day, and you're just going to be moving one day to the next, just managing the force. That's it, that's all you do. You just click on crimes and send people out to solve them. Now, personally, I'd fix that by adding in more control over what happens when you're at those crimes, and more random events. I just want to see interesting things happen that you have to react to. They do get harder later on in the game, but I still felt as though there were too many just standard crimes. I suppose that is what it'd be like to be a police chief. You would just be dealing with petty crime most of the time. But I think a game like this needs something more interesting. It is a game after all. It doesn't have to be a perfect simulation of what it's like to do this job. Now, I don't know the price for this one. Again, though, I will put it up on screen when it comes out, and that's when this video comes out, it will come out the day after that, so it'll come out on July the 28th on Steam. I have heard rumours of it coming out on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One as well, but I couldn't find any solid information on that, so maybe. But once I know the price, I'll put it on the screen. Now, magic again. Aren't you impressed? Probably not. And my final thoughts are that I've mostly enjoyed my time with this, although it does seem to have just crashed on me. Well, that is interesting. Oh no, there we go, we're back. Or are we? Yes, there we go. I'll put some detectives on this. This is the other thing that I'll quickly show you before the game ends, actually, if my detectives can get there in time, before the video ends even. Send some more officers out to this carjacking. Seems like a big one. So my detectives will go there, and we'll have a look at the investigations just before we end the video, but I'll carry on the conclusion. I personally have actually quite enjoyed my time with this game. I know I keep saying I'm going to end the video, but this is the sort of thing you get from City Hall. I've got to fire all the black cops. Yep. And that's from City Hall as well, so kind of weird, but a racist gang has recently made some trouble in the city. They're capturing black townspeople and beating them to death. Now, they don't want police officers to be among the dead, so I've got to fire them. Doesn't seem entirely fair, does it? But the game does start you off with very few black officers, and that's the kind of thing you've got to deal with throughout. So I've got to get rid of Austin, and possibly a couple of others. Yeah, Robbins has got to go, and we'll have to fire him illegally. There's nothing I can do. Whereas Stovall is old enough that I can fire him legally. But I am going to come in for some criticism. I'm going to have to attend a tribunal to sort that out. Let's go to Shift B, Austin, fire illegally. Now later in the game I could have them killed, but that isn't an option just yet. I'll have to get rid of Moser as well, not Moser. I think he's actually out on a case right now. I'll not hire the officers it takes, because what's the point? This is the investigation system anyway. Detectives will stay and investigate a crime for a little while, and eventually they'll pick up more frames, and you'll have to organise them into a storyboard telling the story of what happened. And you can use these little clues up at the top to get an idea of what was going on. Sometimes you'll get these with like six free gaps in the middle of it, so you'll have to really work it out. But for these ones you can sort of just guess. If there's 4 cards here, you can just put them in random order and keep trying until you eventually get it right. Carjacking suburb. The driver is nowhere to be seen. Let's search the car, why not? Offender caught, officers unharmed, civilians unharmed. Sweet. Anyway, would I recommend you have a look at this game? Well, I think I would, yes. I wouldn't say it's like a Game of the Year contender or anything, but it certainly has its moments. It, for me, is not a game that I feel compelled to go to the end of, but I play so many games that that's just not really a consideration anymore. It is a game that I came back to often enough that I thought it was worthwhile to have a look at it if you're someone who likes the idea of this game. If you like the idea of being the police chief and responding to crimes all over the city, some of which can be just theft and fraud and stuff like that. I don't know why I put fraud in as a minor crime there. And other stuff like mass shootings and murder and protests, rape, all that kind of stuff. If you like the idea of being in charge of a team dealing with that, then this is a decent game. It's a decent representation of how that works. Now, if it is of a substantial price, if it's like 20 quid or more, I'd say no, let's leave it until it goes on sale. But possibly anything under 15, I think it might be worth a look and might be worth your time. What the hell is that? Kevin's throat bar. 2 strippers are going at it. Well, that seems like a reasonable place to leave the video anyway. So, I think, yes, we will leave it there. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd be very appreciative of a like down below. Let me know what you think of this game down in the comments. Does it look worth your while? If you've played it, please let me know what you think. And subscribe for more like this if you haven't already. I've been Nathan, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Now, let me deal with these strippers.